She cared deeply about Pete. Antoinetta was a vulnerable young girl that felt like maybe this was going to be her opportunity.
She thinks, even if it is unconventional, she's found her place. Here she has friends, children, and a husband to love.
All she wanted him to do was embrace her and love her.
As Netta settles into a polygamous lifestyle, she begins to enjoy spending time with her sister wives.
If you are lonely, the group offers you solace and a sense of community. If you had low self-esteem, the group builds you up.
She was just happy to have some friends.
Those relationships were important to Netta McCoy.
We're all sisters. We look out for each other.
But there is a hierarchy of sister wives she must deal with.
Vanya was his main woman. Probably cared for Vanya more than any of the women in the house.
Netta is the rookie, at the bottom of the pecking order. But all the women, no matter their number, are subservient to Peter.
I'm gonna go check on the kids. Okay.
While Netta is busy in the kitchen one day, Vanya's cell phone vibrates on the counter. And when Netta sees the caller ID, she gets another lesson about how this house runs.
They had Lord with Peter Moses' phone. That's how they referred to this man.
When Antoinetta told me, I said, Lord of what? Lord of who? Girl, get out of here. You playing, aren't you? She says, no, the women in it call him Lord.
Still, Peter's love and attention erase the doubts Netta has. He makes sure his newest wife feels loved and part of the family. And Peter quickly becomes her everything.
He was father, he was husband, he was lover, he was leader, he was Lord.
And soon enough, Netta begins to call him Lord like the other wives do.
There's a kind of spoon feeding of indoctrination. They take a series of baby steps into the bubble. And once they're in the bubble, what the leader says is right is right.
As the newest wife, Netta's role is homeschooling the children.
So like Hot Wheels? Oh, let's have fun.
Antoinetta's biggest dream was to just be a phenomenal mom.
Netta has never revealed her infertility to Peter. She finds the job of teacher especially rewarding and hopes that perhaps Peter will not care if she cannot add a child to the group. She develops a special bond with one little boy, Vanya's son, Jaden.
Jaden was a really, really happy baby. He actually had his own personality that was just, you know, warm, and everybody loved him.
4-year-old Jaden is the only child in the house not fathered by Peter Moses. Jaden's father left Vanya when he came out as homosexual. Peter is convinced the sins of the father have tainted Jaden.
I told you what that boy was like. Didn't I tell you?
Black Israelites has been called homophobic. They are very against the gay community.
Peter constantly singles Jaden out for extra punishment, triggering Netta's protective instincts.
She loved this little boy, and she would go out her way to make sure that he was happy.
In addition to teaching the children, Netta's days are filled with household chores, hours of group prayer, and unquestioning obedience.
Amen.
Her nights are spent as one of Peter's 5 sexual partners.
They had sex with him multiple times a day.
It was a rotation. You know, on certain nights it would be their turn. If you look at the children's dates of birth, they were staggered like 3 or 4 months apart.
In the bubble, there was no limit to his power. And so as time went on, he craved more and more control, more and more power, and so it just kept escalating.
What's that?
Peter expects his wives to get pregnant as often as possible. But Netta knows that's very unlikely. And the more time she spends in the house, the more her secret infertility weighs on her. If Peter finds out, there's no telling what he will do.
Women are made to be ruled over by men.
Each day, Peter posts a provocative new sermon on YouTube. But his Israelite preaching grows strange.
According to their doctrine, what we call as UFOs, the spaceships of the angels. And when Jesus Christ comes back, he's going to come back with a bunch of angels, and they're going to destroy America in 60 minutes.
A lot of you hate order. You hate instruction. And that's why the Lord's going to kill a lot of you.
Peter becomes increasingly militant, and his views more racist.
Many of the black Israelite groups have developed a kind of sense that we are embattled, we are persecuted, that other races are to be feared, even despised.
Why is the white man so rich and powerful?
But they believe that one day the blacks is going to go overthrow the white man.
Now is the time when the war must start.
That is the doctrine, the race wars. Like, these guys, they take that to heart.
We must take them out.
These are not the teachings of the loving and tolerant God that Netta knows so well. But she is now a part of this life, completely under Peter's control and powerless to change.
She thought her life was in danger.
It's like a nightmare.
27-year-old Netta McCoy is living a dangerous lie. She is an infertile wife in a polygamous household where each woman is expected to help populate a nation of true believers.
The only way you can fulfill that prophecy to be a nation is by having more than one wife. If you have 5 wives, you can have 5 children in 1 year.
But her situation only worsens when Peter takes his sexual appetite to another level. Peter commands Netta and her sister wives to perform sexually with each other while he watches.
They have an agenda. That agenda is power. That agenda is control. That agenda is lust.
Pete would have used, all in the name of God to convince the women that this was the right thing to do.
He cites biblical passages to coerce Netta and her sister wives to bend to his sexual will.
You be obedient and do what God tells you to do, or you get ostracized for it.
There was no limit to his power.
For Netta, her blind love for Peter makes everything okay. But soon the relationships at the house start to sour.
What you looking at?
The sweet and caring man Netta fell in love with reveals himself as a tyrant.
Get back to work, woman.
And her relationships with her sister wives deteriorate.
In that environment where there's 4 or 5 wives, it's easy to feel neglected. It's easy to feel unwanted.
But soon, Netta finds herself dealing with much bigger problems. Peter needs to build his nation, and even though they've only been together for a short time, he is impatient with Netta's failure to conceive a child.
Waste of time.
She begins withholding sex from him to try and conceal her secret. But one horrific night in October 2010,
No, Peter, please.
Peter's patience runs out.
No. Please, no. Peter, no.
Pete wanted to sleep with her. She didn't want to. And he sexually attacked her.
He said he had knocked her tooth loose.
He had put a gun to her head.
You're supposed to serve your man.
He pulled the trigger, but the bullets didn't come out.
And he told her the only reason why he's not going to kill her is because God has a calling on her life.
Looks like God has a plan for you.
The abuse on her increased to the point where she thought her life was in danger.
Netta has spent weeks trying to tune out what she felt in her heart. This isn't her family. This is a cult. Now, the reality hits her like a lightning bolt. She must get away. But how? The next day, while the other wives are at work and Peter is in the shower, Netta makes her escape.
That's when Netta called me, and she was crying. And I said, what's wrong? I couldn't make out what she was saying.
I've got to get out of here.
Netta arrives safely back in D.C.,
Mom.
and her nightmare finally feels over. She comes home to live with her family, but doesn't tell them why she left Peter. It's only days later when her family learns the truth. At her childhood church, Netta unburdens her heart in front of them.
She got up and they call it testifying. She thanked the Lord that she was still here.
I want to thank God because I am so lucky to be alive.
Thank you, Lord. Thank you.
I was living with this man. He wanted me to have sex with him all the time.
Netta stumbled across a cult. My sister was held captive and abused.
But I didn't want to be a part of that man's plan anymore.
She tried to get away from it.
I asked her to go and report it, but she was too scared of him to do it.
Netta hunkers down in her mother's D.C. apartment, insisting to her worried family she will not return to Durham. But inside, she struggles with her decision.
Not only did Netta McCoy fear Peter Moses and what he might physically do to her, she feared the wrath of God. He would explain, if you leave the group, you leave God. If you disagree with me, you're disagreeing with God.
Even hundreds of miles away, Peter's power still has its reach.
She did not sort through what is coercive persuasion, what is brainwashing.
Back in Durham, Peter is not about to let his newest disciple defect so easily.
There must have been palpable fear going through Peter Moses' mind when Netta left. I mean, she knew his secrets.
That's when he started manipulating her and rearing her back in.
Hey, Netta.
By lying, telling her that she was going to be #1.
Netta, listen, things will be different this time.
He would never touch her or hurt her again.
I don't think I can trust you.
Listen, just come back.
Pete probably felt as though she can be manipulated, she can be brainwashed, she can be used, because she could. And he played on that.
For a while, Netta stands her ground. But when Peter's apologies fail to move her, he tries a different tactic.
Whatever he had to do to bring her back, he was willing to escalate and escalate and escalate further.
Peter threatens violence against Netta's loved ones if she does not return.
If you don't get back here, I'm gonna come for your family.
She shared enough with me to let me know that he was dangerous.
The threats are ominous, and Netta's already shaky self-esteem starts to fall apart.
There was actually writings where she would write to Pete and say, I'm sorry that I haven't lived up to your standard.
It's a combination of fear and insecurity that slowly drives Netta back into Peter's world. Just before Thanksgiving, Peter and Vania drive up to D.C. to collect Netta. She feels a twisted sense of comfort when they arrive. But her family has a bad feeling.
I told her he wasn't no good.
I'll be in touch.
But, you know, she was grown.
It's a decision that will change her life forever. Netta returns to Peter's house, hoping for the best.
When cult members like Netta McCoy return to the group, there may be a sense of relief because this is the life they know.
She takes some comfort in knowing she will reunite with little Jaden.
Jaden! Jaden, I see Netta's home!
But when she runs upstairs to the bedroom shared by all the kids, Jaden is nowhere to be found. And when Netta goes looking for answers, she finds out the secrets being kept in Peter's house will take her straight to hell.
No one knew this demon could be so vengeful.
He killed me! Jaden, I see Netta's home!
When Netta McCoy is drawn back into Peter Moses' cult in early December of 2010, she discovers that 4-year-old Jaden, sister wife Vania's son from a previous marriage, is missing. Netta is worried, but no one else seems to care.
Where is he?
Not even his mother.
I have my own problems.
Vania tells Netta a babysitter is watching Jaden.